Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views. Thank you so much for staying with us. From our hashtag Africa Focus feature, we're going to be shifting gears to a very, very passionate topic of ours here at the station. We're going to be looking at the genocide in Gaza. But this time around, looking at South Africans that are serving in the IDF. South Africa has boldly taken Israel to the International Court of Justice, a step that was appreciated and lauded the world over, accusing this apartheid state of Israel of genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza. But yet, right here at home, South Africans who openly serve in the Israeli Defense Forces, a military accused of crimes against humanity by South Africa, continue to enjoy impunity. Today we ask, how can the government decry genocide on the global stage while almost turning a blind eye to those aiding and abating it from our own soil? If you don't know the story, there's a young South African citizen who has reportedly been arrested in Israel after trying to join the Israeli military. The circumstances remain a bit murky, but this incident reopens a critical debate on why there's been little to no domestic prosecution of South African citizens who join or support the IDF, despite clear prohibitions under local and international law. And joining me now to unpack this is Attorney Ziyaad Patel of Ziyaad Patel Attorneys, who has long advocated for accountability in the space, and they're working very, very hard to make sure that our government, the same one that took Israel to the ICJ, does something about its own citizens who are serving in the IDF. Ziyaad, assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Really appreciate you giving us your time this morning.
Wa alaikum assalam, and shukran for having me on your morning show. So this is this is certainly a problem, and it has been a problem for a long time, where we've been advocating, we have been bringing criminal complaints before the South African authorities. Predominantly, this entails the National Director of Public Prosecutions as well as the South African Police Services, or the Hawks, who are, by law and by statute, empowered to deal with these kinds of cases where we are addressing egregious crimes, the nature of crimes that are being perpetrated with utter impunity in occupied Palestine and in Gaza, and of course in the broader Middle East region as well. On many occasions when I've been questioned about this or interviewed about this issue, we must go and look back to 2008, 2009. That is when the first war broke out, Operation Cast Lead, as it was called, and utter crimes were committed by the Israeli Defense Force. Those crimes were never held. Those perpetrators of those crimes were never held accountable by either the South African authorities through cases and criminal complaints that we had brought, or by the international community. And we see that the international community continues to give carte blanche to Netanyahu, who is part of an ultra-nefarious, ethnocratic, ultra-right regime that is hell-bent on discrimination and carrying out these racist Zionist policies of discrimination that is now has culminated into the genocide. I think in already October 2023, just after the Hamas carried out the Operation Al-Aqsa flood, I wrote a piece to say that stated the following, that the impending or unfolding Holocaust in Gaza, because the indicators, the factors were already there. If you had looked at Palestinian neighborhoods in the West Bank, you see Palestinian townships, we started observing the pogroms, witnessing ultra-right of the Zionist regime leaders that were speaking about, exterminating the Palestinian people. And we know that this has been brought forward in terms of this Amalek doctrine, that Palestinians must be wiped off the face of the earth. So we are at this critical juncture, and we know that our Palestinian brethren are suffering tremendously, and there's an ongoing genocide. So how do we stop this genocide? We can do what is within our capacity, what is within our availability of resources, and motivating our government, advocating our government to do what is within its constitutional mandate and within the legal framework. In South Africa, we've got a legal framework and we have a constitutional mandate. What we've been impressing upon our authorities is to fulfill their obligations within this mandate. We have provided them with critical evidence, comprehensive cases prepared over a decade that they need to be sitting with, and they need to address it and do proper investigations and hold South African nationals and citizens as well as Zionist institutions accountable for these crimes that are being committed with utter impunity. Now, I think you are correct when you say that South Africa has been hailed on the international front for doing what it has done in terms of bringing the application to the International Court of Justice, as well as making a referral to the International Criminal Court. But we see that there's a serious disconnect between the South African government and its position internationally and what it is undertaking domestically and on the local front. Now, I have spoken about this, and we've addressed these issues in the past. So how do we take the next step? That is where we are busy with at the moment. We are busy with looking at avenues and possible litigation against the South African government, against the president of this country, and organs of state as well as ministries that are failing to fulfill their obligations in this genocide that is happening in real time. One of the cases,
very important to note. Yes.
One of the cases is this case that I saw had come out yesterday, and this was actually a follow-up of an article that was published, I think, last year by News 24, is about Aaron Behack. Aaron Behack is a South African citizen, and he was found to be serving in what you would call the IDF Paratroopers 202, also known as the Ghost Unit. In Hebrew, it's called the Refrain Unit, or Refrain, the Ghost Unit. There is evidence, comprehensive evidence, incontrovertible evidence that Aaron Behack, together with his other paratroopers or with his other, from that division of snipers, there were a team of 12 members, if I recall correctly, and they were then paired up into, there were teams of 4 and then paired in 2, and each of them, there is evidence by one of the leaders that stated that each of those members were responsible for 5 kills or 5 civilian kills. Now, this was uncovered by an incredible journalist, Yunus Tarawi, a Palestinian journalist, who then identified and found geolocated maps of this unit operating in specific areas. It started around about November 2023, and it carried on to about March or April 2024, started in the Al-Tawa district in South Gaza City, and then it moved near the Quds Hospital, where there were eyewitness reports that civilians were being targeted by the IDF snipers. This then moved over to this unit moving towards the Al-Nasser Hospital, and over a period of time, many civilians, including a young girl, 16 years old, was killed. Civilians were being targeted with utter impunity. And what had happened was, even if one civilian was targeted, and, you know, obviously Palestinians are walking together and they want to take their loved ones into a safe space, when you try to save the one that was shot, they shot the one that was trying to carry that, that civilian that was targeted by this unit. So this is the kind of nature. It got so bad at the Al-Nasser Hospital that people that were transporting water and food items with ropes and trolleys just so that they were not targeted by these snipers. We're seeing the same thing happen with civilians today in Gaza, where they're going to food points and trying to get food, and they're being targeted. There was the flour massacre that had happened, and this is being undertaken with intent to destroy in part or in whole a civilian population. It falls within the definition of a genocide, within the Genocide Convention, and that Israel must be held accountable, because this is not the targeting of military objectives. but the targeting of civilians, the instrumenting weapons of war such as starvation, creating the famine conditions that we now see in Gaza, which is completely horrible, completely unacceptable situation. And yet the Israeli Zionist regime continues to perpetrate these crimes with impunity. So we have to hold this individual, Aaron Behack, to account. To give your listeners another example, last year there was another individual, an Israeli Zionist, who served in Gaza and traveled to South Africa, to Cape Town, to go and have a holiday. We had then received credible evidence that this individual was part of a unit of the IDF that was involved in this ongoing genocide. We contacted and communicated with South African police services and senior people within the SAPS and the Hawks, and their attitude was completely indifferent, to the point of saying that if a person travels from Israel in the IDF and comes to South Africa and has a holiday, it doesn't necessarily mean he's committed a crime. Now, you've got this kind of attitude, right, within your authorities, within your senior leaders, that state these kind of things that annoy and, of course, are absolutely disconnected to what South Africa has actually undertaken on the international stage, because you are representing the South African government that is making a very strong position about Israel's perpetration of genocide, as well as when you made a referral to the International Criminal Court, you included crimes of war crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes of aggression, and so forth. And yet we are not seeing the movement that is required. So we would impress and implore our South African authorities to fulfill its mandate. We are not asking the South African authorities to do things that falls beyond the scope of their mandate, but we have become part of the international community. We have ratified the Rome Statute, which constitutes part of the International Criminal Court Act, that states very clearly that if an individual is either a South African citizen, or if a person is resident within the Republic, or if a person enters within the territory of the Republic and has committed an egregious crime outside of the Republic, it's considered to have been committed within the Republic, and that jurisdictional requirements would have been met. We also have the protection of constitutional democracy against terrorism and related activities. And this act, as well as the Regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act, deals very specifically with instances of unlawful service in a foreign army that is committing these kind of egregious crimes or acts of terrorism. And this is where we brought a case in 2022, which we extended then last year. It was called the South African Zionist Terrorism Corridor Probe. It put a spotlight on South African nationals and citizens serving in the IDF, as well as complicit Zionist institutions such as the Jewish National Fund, the South African Zionist Federation, Telfed, the Israeli Center for Cape Town, and other Zionist institutions that are facilitating this broad-scale terrorism network and spreading this global scale of terrorism that is being imposed on the civilian population in Palestine, and they are exporting this to our country and to other countries. I have indicated very clearly to the National Prosecuting Authority and to the police that this creates a serious security risk to our national safety and security protocols that need to be followed. It's a national safety and security risk to our territory and to our sovereignty, because these individuals continue to be trained paramilitary, trained by a foreign army. They have all these skills, these abilities to use these explosives, perpetrating this horrendous genocide, and they're coming back to our country and enjoying the freedoms here, which is completely and utterly unacceptable. So what I can say is that we are not letting down on this. We are going to persist. We are going to continue, and we are going to fight until we see justice and until we find that our authorities are on the right side of the law and begin to start upholding the constitutional values of this country, on what our country has been founded, on the defeat of the crime of apartheid, which was a crime against humanity, and that we fulfill our obligations both domestically and internationally. And in this space, we will continue to work, inshallah, for as long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the strength to hold these Zionist criminals accountable. These are thugs. They are the mafia that are operating with impunity. They are being protected and shielded by European countries. They are being protected by the Americans, who will continue to give them huge amounts of military aid, and then expect in return for Palestinians to be grateful when America drops or gives X amount of dollars of food aid. This is utterly inconsistent with international law. The fact that in Gaza you have to uphold international law, international humanitarian law, and the Geneva Conventions. You need to create humanitarian corridors. You need to provide aid at scale that is required. You are not supposed to be undoing the good work of UNRWA over the many years. Remove UNRWA from the ground that's able to deliver aid at scale. Create another notion of aid to the people of Gaza, and then the people of Gaza are being shot as they're trying to get aid. This is an intentional targeting of a civilian population. It is a genocide, it's war crimes, it's crimes against humanity, it's crimes against aggression by an entity that is funded by the Americans. Just to give you an example, just in the short period of the war that started in Gaza, at least two atomic bombs have already been utilized in Gaza. 25 tons and more of bombs has been used in a very confined space of a population of about just 2 million people that are being very, very condensed into a small space. And we know that they've been enduring this kind of war for a decade and longer, where they've continued to be targeted. There's been airstrikes. Their leaders have been targeted, Ismail Haniyeh and others, Hamas leaders that were going to negotiate peace. They were all being targeted outside of Palestine, in Iran and other countries. This complete undermining of the sovereignty of other countries in the Middle East is completely unacceptable and is in total violation of international law. So inshallah, we will continue the struggle on our side.
No, most definitely. And we're going to, on that note, Advocate Ziyaad Patel, really appreciate you giving us your time, and we'll definitely be keeping tabs and tracking the story as it continues to unfold.
Shukran. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam. That was attorney Ziyaad Patel of Ziyaad Patel Attorneys, speaking about a very, very concerning trend. Young South Africans in particular. I mean, this, one here that they found, his name is Aaron Behack, only 23. Hey, only 23 years. And it's scary, especially to know that as a South African, as a person who was so proud of your country, going to the ICJ, there are people that have the same ID book as you, the same passport as you. They identify the same way you identify yourself, a South African. But there's a blood of Palestinian men, women, and children on their hands. And the government is not doing anything about it. So I think we have to continue to follow the story. We have to continue showing their faces, and we have to continue to putting pressure on our government to make sure that something is being done. It's time to walk the talk. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, News and Views continues.
Rejuvenating media day by day.